like the most common thing I get in regards to a bear charge is like, man, I would have crapped my pants. Oh, I would have pissed myself. I promise you, if you have time to do that, you're not really getting charged by a bear. Once they feel like they've gotten their cash out of it, they'll just sell that land and then it's gone forever. Both sides in this battle are kind of using the same rhetoric, right? They both say, yeah, we're pro public lands. Is becoming more and more rare, is just the ability to, listen to somebody's opinions, let them know your opinions, and even if you don't agree, you can come away a little bit more informed, at least know what the other side's thinking. Even if you have the most successful season in your life, it is such a small part of your year, of your day out, if that's what you have, that you better appreciate everything else. Hey, this is Ryan Callaghan, and you're listening to Living Country in the City, episode 15.
Y'all ready for your dose of flyover state spirit? Straight from the concrete jungle? Well, put down your latte and pull on your boots. It's time for Living Country in the City.
Hey y'all, thank you so much for joining me for episode 15 of Living Country in the City. Today I'm talking with First Lite's Director of Conservation and Public Relations, as well as cultivator of probably the most famous and magnificent mustache in hunting, Ryan Callaghan. A big issue facing us, probably one of the biggest issues facing hunters today, is the threat of losing our public lands. For those of you like myself, living in the city, who rely heavily on public lands not only for hunting, but for pretty much all of our outdoor activities, this is a topic that is incredibly important to be aware of, educated on, and frequently discussing. So who better to talk to than one of the most outspoken voices on the issue of public lands? Ryan, I know you're a busy guy, and I appreciate you taking the time to join me today.
Oh, yeah, man. Much appreciated. I love this stuff.
So I hope you'll allow me one small moment of just being a little bit of a fanboy before we get started. I'm a huge fan of Meat Eater. It's kind of my show. It gets me when I start getting discouraged about, oh my gosh, I've got so much to learn. I've got, I'm never going to actually get anything, whatever it is. It's one of the shows that I watch that really gets me excited and pumped. And pretty much my favorite episodes are all the ones with you.
All right.
So last night I was kind of watching a few episodes, and I was watching the one, what's the phrase? The Smell Me Now lady.
Oh yeah.
I was in tears watching that one. Cause I was on a bear kick, recently. Cause just everyone, that's the first question they always ask when I tell them I'm, going out to Idaho. They're like, well, aren't you afraid of bears? I'm like, well, not really. I mean, yeah, they're out there, but for the most part they're good. But I was on a bear kick, and I was showing some people a bunch of different bear videos and stuff like that. So that one popped up and just had me in tears, but.
That's going to be a tough one to live down. I don't think it's going away. Yeah, I mean, that's a prime example of don't go into the woods with cameras, right? Like,
at least if you're not prepared to never live something down, I guess, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so that like the most common thing I get in regards to a bear charge is like, man, I would have crapped my pants. Oh, I would have pissed myself. I promise you, if you have time to do that, you're not really getting charged by a bear. Like, you may be in an intense situation, but you got time for like one thought, and you just kind of got to say, okay, this is my best course of action. And it feels like it's going slow, but it happens super fast. And that one turned out as good as it possibly could have. And, certainly I get very analytical because, I think the more interactions of that type, both for the bears and for myself, like, you run out of good things happening, right? It's like, eventually it's going to be a bad situation, or, that you've educated that bear for the next person that comes along. She may play it a little differently the next time. So
percentage wise, you've eliminated a few of your good chances, and no, that's
what I feel. I feel like, ooh, how lucky can one guy get? Because I've had a few of those encounters, and they've all turned out good. So,
Well, here's hoping that all of us beat the percentages as much as humanly possible. But
Absolutely.
So I've got a wide variety of people that listen to this. Why don't you just give me a short introduction, just about yourself and kind of your history with hunting and what you do now?
Sure. So I grew up in Montana, fifth generation. The fam just got birthed here about 2 years ago. So got some pretty deep roots over there, and really did most of my growing up in Missoula, and it's like the town where you cannot throw a rock without hitting a fishing guide or a real estate agent or a lawyer. So I went the fishing guide route, hunting guide route, and it just absolutely took hold for me. And one of the main parts of the job that some people don't like, but I ended up really enjoying, is just showing, first timers, new folks, all the things that I enjoy. Right. So, and eventually, I ran into the founders of First Lite, Kent Cruz, Scott Robinson, and we ended up, kind of collaborating, and I'd help them out on the First Lite side of things. This is like in its infancy, right? So everybody had, at least one other job at that point, and then came on full time in the winter of 2011, and I was the sales, marketing, customer service person, and so we were all wearing a bunch of hats at that point. And then now I'm the director of conservation and public relations. So, to sum that up, I get to work with everything on the philanthropic side, and the conservation message is definitely like a pillar of our company, and it's something that we've always done. And just recently, we've kind of started really letting people know where we stand on issues, how we support different groups, and the PR side of things is summed up by telling people how cool we are.
Well, to some extent, I think that speaks for itself. But
all
right. So that really brings up, what I wanted to talk to you about today. You are, from everything I've seen, one of the most outspoken voices on the issue of public lands. You're really, I feel like, one of the experts, and that's why I wanted to talk to you today. And it's something, I'll admit, I'm fairly new to all of this. I've always been a bit of an outdoorsman. I've always loved it, camping and all of this, but hunting in particular is a new thing to me over the past maybe 2 years. And I've been learning more. I've been reading. I've been seeing, all the Instagram posts and everything. And if you could just give us really what the big issue is facing us with our public lands, and when we say, actually, let's start, when we say public lands, what does that mean?
Yeah. So I'll try to make this as easily digestible as possible, but there's lands that are managed by the states, and there's lands that are managed by the federal government, and those are broken down into different kind of governing bodies. So U.S. Forest Service, Bureau of Land Management, national parks. On the state side, state lands can be anything from an actual state park to, in the state of Idaho, a mine, a gravel pit, land set aside specifically for timber harvest and everything in between. And so the grand scope on the federally managed lands really encompasses everything, because those lands had been set aside for multiple use. Okay, and multiple use is, from very, selfish-minded pursuits like, hunting, fishing, hiking to, timber extraction, mineral extraction, grazing rights, wind farms. You can do anything from make money to sit back and watch the clouds go by. So, and that's kind of the hard thing to wrap your head around on a lot of this stuff is, even though you think of it specifically for what you like to do, it's really there for multiple use. So, the issue that's going on right now, and it's a huge thing, but, is, one side of it is, well, can the states manage these lands better than the feds? And there's a lot of finger pointings on both sides saying like, well, see, the state screwed this up and the feds screwed this up. The main difference to keep in mind here is the state land is state land specifically for the purpose of raising money for the state. Most of the time it's for education. And so, when you see state land that is getting cleared to timber or, like in the case I brought up here, there's a gravel pit, that is on state land. Well, the state's making money off of, the extraction of that resource, and a percentage of that cash is going back to fund, the schools in Idaho. So they're not doing anything wrong. They're doing what has been mandated for that land, and that's what they deemed was the most appropriate use. Whereas on the Fed side of things, they have to look at a broader scope, right? They're saying, okay, is this the best possible use? There's mountain bike trails here. There's hiking trails here. There's a major recreation area, a healthy elk herd, healthy deer herd, or whatever the case may be. So they have to look at all that and say, yes, we're going to allow a certain amount of timber extraction, or yes, we're going to allow a mine to open up because we've determined that that's the best possible use, even though we factored in the recreation side of things. So it gets a little tricky there, but the main thing for folks to remember is, we don't, from a First Lite perspective, we don't see this as a real political thing, right? This is where, our customers, we've done our internal studies and surveys, and, 80% of our customer base hunts exclusively on public land. So we've always looked at that and kept that in mind when we are vocal on issues, because, if this stuff were to go away tomorrow, you could, make a case for saying that 80% of our business would go away tomorrow. So, that's really the First Lite perspective on this stuff. Personally, it's, certainly all I've really ever had. That's where I go and do everything I enjoy from, this time of year, it's picking up shed antlers, picking mushrooms. There's definitely like some late season skiing here, but it goes through backcountry skiing, mountain biking, hunting, fishing. Everything that you can possibly do is found on public land, land that you can use and everybody in LA can go use. And so it's a resource for the people, and, people need to, even if they're not enjoying it, they should feel a lot better that the stuff exists.
Of course, public land's very important to me, considering, I live in a 450 square foot apartment. I don't exactly have much acreage, but one of the things I run into a lot is I'm a libertarian. I tend to lean, and I grew up conservative as well, so I tend to lean a little bit more towards the state side of things and like that. And I get a lot of people that talk to me and say, okay, yeah, this is all great stuff. The argument I get from them is, well, isn't this just another form of welfare? Isn't this just taking money away from people and putting it towards, towards something that they're not going to use, basically giving away someone else's money? How would you respond to that?
Oh, just off the hip, I'd say there's probably a lot of those folks that have a lot of things that aren't in use, but they value them. These lands, just because there's nothing, happening right now with them that they find valuable. There's plenty of folks out there that see a lot of value in those things being totally left alone. I am a user of this system, and probably way more so than yourself, just because of where we live, right? So yeah. I get to use it every single day, for sure, every single weekend. And it's super easy. I get to hop on the mountain bike and zip out of the office, and I'm on national forest in the blink of an eye, and can go ride for an hour and come right back to the office. So the ski hill here, that's a good example of a company that has a lease with the Forest Service. They're making money off of that lease. But the bus stops right out in front of the office. I can hop on that and be in the lift line in 10 minutes and go ski on national forest ground, paying money to do so even. So, I truly don't see it as a form of welfare at all. You could definitely look at these areas as a power plant of sorts that is providing, clean air. It's filtering our water. It's certainly providing an incredible mental escape also. So there's a giant mental health argument there, and we're paying for it. So, there's certainly some pitfalls in that statement from the libertarian point of view, but the land is at work. There may not be smokestacks rolling out of it, but it is, it's working around the clock for everybody. So.
And so you touched on it a little bit, just with kind of the difference between the federally owned and the state-owned lands. Just the concept of the purpose of the state-owned lands is to make money for the state, versus the federally owned lands. And maybe we could get into a little bit more about what do you see as the biggest issues with, because I guess a lot of the issue is the federal government wanting to turn over control of these lands to the state. Did I say that correctly?
Well, it's the opposite. So
the opposite.
Yes. So there's certain players in a lot of states that are advocating very hard for control of federal land. So they want to control those from the state level. So there's a lot of things in place. If you were to deal with the federal agency, such as environmental controls, studies that have to be done, that you can that you don't really have to deal with from a state level. NEPA is a big prime example of that. So environmental impact assessment. So if the state manages these lands, potentially, big industry can come in and, make a bid for, extractive use in a much easier way than they can with the Fed. Because the state is looking to make money off of that land, I certainly believe that the probability of, way more, landscape marring extractive use would go on at the definite, deficit of the things that I like to do, which is just go out and enjoy it. So,
okay. So this is more of a push then from the state to control these federally owned lands versus not as much like the federal government trying to give this back to the states, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Yes. And the feds truly aren't looking to control more land. The states have, one thing that the states can do is once they have a section of land that they feel that they aren't getting the return that they need from it, because all of these things cost money, whether it's road maintenance, fire prevention, any number of things, they see a diminishing return on that resource, right? So they have to pay to manage it. So a lot of times they'll, once they feel like they've gotten their cash out of it, they'll just sell that land and then it's gone forever. So the state has this, long running history of selling off the land that they were given. So that's a major, major concern. If they were to take over a lot of these federally managed lands, we would see, the same process being played out where all of a sudden we may or may not be able to go play on it if it's state managed, because there's plenty of it's private ground that's managed by the state-owned ground, and they can choose to let people on it or not. Mm-hmm. And they can also choose to just sell it outright. And that's, my major fear there.
Yeah. And it's unfortunately not always places like, BHA or the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation that are making the bids on these. Best case scenario, hopefully it's maybe some rancher that it might at least, leave it as private access. And, but worst case scenario, we're looking at people that want to do clear cutting and just destroy this land.
There's responsible ways to do that too, I'm not foolish to think that stuff isn't a necessary part of how we're, growing as a country, but, it's got to be done responsibly. And, the record of state management, particularly as far as, that land being gone with, no hope of returning to public access is there. And, I firmly believe that the state should not be getting any more land to manage. The biggest thing that gets brought up constantly is, the bill for your average fire, right? We have this crazy winter here, super wet spring already. We're going to see major growth in the underbrush, grasses. If all of a sudden the tap shuts off, everything dries out, we could have an insane fire season. And, right now, it's the feds that are paying for that stuff. So if the state takes over those lands, the states are going to have this giant bill, and, quite likely, because they have to balance their budget, unlike the federal government, they're going to be like, holy shit, we got to sell this stuff because we cannot maintain it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've actually heard lawsuits can tend to be a problem as well when people get injured on state land or.
Yes, absolutely. You go to, any, national forest, just look at the infrastructure that's set up for the different user groups, trailheads, lots and lots of toilet facilities, improved campground, potable water. You see it every day in the city where, somebody trips on a crack or slips in the wrong spot, and they feel like the city should have been on top of that, and the city's in the wrong for not providing a safe walking path, right? So, that stuff happens all the time on Forest Service roads, Forest Service campgrounds. And that would certainly be a burden to the state as well if they were to manage it.
So what's the status of things right now? What, we've got, I guess, some bills being proposed still. What's the current landscape? Where do things lie?
Well, one of the kind of the key things in the crosshairs right now is the investigation into recently designated monuments. Monument is a very tricky thing because they're all unique. And I feel like they're probably the least understood thing we have out there when it comes to public lands, because Bears Ears is one of the primary ones that's getting another look right now. So monument, everybody, think of like the Washington Monument, right? There's no hunting or fishing there that I'm aware of. And that's what people think of as a monument. Well, here south of Ketchum, or east of Ketchum, is the Craters of the Moon National Monument. It's this giant lava flow. It is totally badass. It's really cool. When that was designated as a monument, through the process, they somehow determined that it was going to be more of a visitor center. No hunting, no fishing allowed down there, whereas previously you could hunt out there. Quail, big mule deer. Look at Bears Ears, and Bears Ears is, they restricted some motorized access. They did curb a little bit, a very small percentage of hunting, which I'm certainly not a fan of. But a lot of the historical use there is protected. So, the tribes in the area can use the area as they have historically. Missouri River, the Missouri River Breaks monument, almost all historical use was protected there. So there's cattle grazing, camping, hunting, fishing. So none of these monuments are truly alike, and there are some that don't allow hunting. There's some that are limited access. There's, it's a tough thing to just kind of make a blanket statement and define. Whereas a wilderness area is, people kind of go, okay, wilderness, it's wild. And they feel like there's some understanding there, but, there's more more of a bulletproof, this is what a wilderness area is, whereas monument is very tricky. So, I truly hope that this Bears Ears National Monument, the Missouri River Breaks National Monument, stay the way they are, because that is just bad country. And for the most part, you can still go do what you want to go do in those areas. So, and go out and enjoy it.
On that note, really quick, let's take a moment to hear a word from one of my partners. Hey, y'all, if you're like me, a new elk hunter really trying to up your game and get into backcountry big game hunting, or if you're an experienced hunter trying to fill tags more consistently, you really need to check out elk101.com's University of Elk Hunting online course. If you're looking for a central resource to really take you all the way from start to finish when it comes to big game hunting, this is it. Corey Jacobson is a world champion elk caller and one of the definitive experts when it comes to elk hunting. And in this online course, he shares over 30 years of his elk hunting experience, strategies, and tips. All of this is broken down into easy-to-digest modules and packed full of great video content as well. This will provide you with all of the resources you need to be a confident elk hunter, regardless of your past experience. What's even better is you can get $20 off the University of Elk Hunting online course by visiting livingcountryinthecity.com/partners. That's livingcountryinthecity.com/partners.
So, not all this stuff is super cut and dry. The main thing I tell people is, it's far better to get informed on this stuff, rather than just hop online and saying like, oh yeah, that makes sense, because both sides in this battle are kind of using the same rhetoric, right? They both say, yeah, we're pro public lands. But, from the state side of things, there's some truth to that, yeah, we're pro public lands, but the other side of that is until we get in a deficit, we need to sell them. Whereas on the federally managed side of things, their mandate right now is, they're recognizing that recreation is, super important to the American people. It's super important to their bottom line as well. So managing for recreation has become more and more of an important thing for on the federally managed land side.
So, I really feel like this is one of those issues that, regardless of where you are on the political spectrum, can bring a lot of people on either side together. You have people who gravitate more toward, on the right, more towards the hunting and fishing aspects of things, and I'm making generalizations, of course, but then you have a lot of people on the left who are more passionate about preserving nature and animals, preserving animals in their natural habitat and things like that. And, while we are all coming at it from possibly different directions with a little bit different motivations and reasons, it's one of those things where we're all, to some extent, fighting the same battle. And, we may disagree on a lot of stuff, but this is one spot where we can all come together and fight together. And I think that's really important.
Oh, I absolutely think so too. And to speak just kind of personally where I lie politically, I feel like, I could never register one way or another because, I'm trying to dissect everybody and I'm not voting on a clear party line, right? During my very brief, college career, I had this class called the Historian's Craft, the history anthropology, and it's like, this is how you write a good paper. You read both sides, you analyze both sides, and then you come up with your own opinion. And being naive, I thought that's just the way the world works, right? so that's what I've been doing. And so, I have friends on every part of the political spectrum, I was just down hanging with some buddies in Texas who I love them to death. And they are as right side of the world as it gets. But, when it comes to the land, my stepdad's a prime example. He works for Rabo Agri-Finance, largest ag financer in the world. He's a beef guy. He can tell you the price of beef at any given point of the day to day. And, he tells me all the time, he's like, yeah, I think hunters and ranchers are the two groups that respect the land the most, because you can't grow good beef without good grass and good forage. And so they have a vested interest in protecting that land if they're doing it the right way, because that's what's going to get them a paycheck at the end of the year. So, and so to me, you can totally be, the hippie hiker person cruising through the woods and just enjoying things and have, a very like-minded conversation with the dude and his wranglers who's sweating it out on top of a horse, chasing cattle around through the brush, So it really should not be a political conversation at all. Because, the land is providing so much more than most folks give it credit for. And it's for everybody, it's not picking sides.
So we talked a little bit about kind of the current state of things, where things lie now. Where do you see things going? What do you see? What kind of concerns you coming up, and what do you feel? What encourages you that you see in the next few years?
The concerning parts to me is we've really come to feel like the whole political scene is this very hands-off, hopefully I make it and vote, every 4 years type of deal. Whereas, the whole system was set up as a very hands-on, we the people type of deal. And I know on these issues regarding lands and access, I've seen firsthand people realize that they can call their elected officials, they can email their elected officials. There's not going to be any sort of backlash. And that's truly how this system is set up. You elected people to represent you. It doesn't stop there. It's your responsibility to let them know how you feel. And that's the way that they're supposed to vote. They're supposed to represent, the people in their constituency. So, and that's what I'm feeling better and better about, is I'm seeing more and more people that were totally hands off, probably didn't even vote, start wading in, shooting emails out, writing letters, making phone calls. And I do feel good about that, because that's what needs to happen. Like, get on mailing lists, even for groups that you do not support, and, read and see what everybody's talking about, and see where people fall on their side of the issue, and then don't stop there, and call in, email in.
I'd almost rather see people who don't vote in the big elections, but will sit and will write letters and will visit and will send emails and petition for things, versus someone who will vote in these big elections but then never take any responsibility afterwards. I mean, I'd rather have them I'd rather have them take part in both aspects, but if you're going to pick one, I'd rather you actually get hands-on and dig in and do the footwork, rather than just voting and washing your hands and saying, okay, I did my part, I'm done.
Oh yeah. You do yourself a tremendous favor to just, hop online, look at, when your next, city council meeting is, when your next, fishing game, public forum is, and just totally just go sit there. And it is amazing. It is so eye-opening. I hit every one that I can around here, because you go, oh my God, that's where those people are coming from. Because that's what they truly believe, or it's, totally misinformed, or, it's amazing what, those public forums kind of bring to light, and you'll learn a lot about your neighbors for sure.
Good and bad, I can imagine.
Yeah, good and bad, but you got to be able to have the discourse, and I think that's what is so cool about podcasts, is it's setting time away specifically to talk about an issue, or just talk and have some back and forth, and I feel like that's certainly something that is becoming more and more rare, is just the ability to listen to somebody's opinions, let them know your opinions, and even if you don't agree, you can come away a little bit more informed, at least know what the other side's thinking. So
absolutely. And that's one of the things I love most about starting this podcast and doing it is I'm excited to get this information out to people, but I really value what I get to learn and the time I get to sit down with folks like you and really educate myself and learn more. Like I said, I'm still pretty brand new at this, and I don't always fully grasp a lot of these topics, and you've really opened my eyes to a lot more of the, I guess, intricacies of it, if that's the right way to phrase it. But so now, if people did want to get involved with with this issue, if they wanted, what's the best way for them to get started, get talking to these people?
Well, I really do like Teddy Roosevelt Conservation Partnership, Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, National Wildlife Federation. There's also NWF Sportsman, which is National Wildlife Federation sportsman side of things. But you can sign up, get action alerts, and just read them. And if something, hits home, then, you follow through the link and, email your elected officials and then you can call them up. And, I've sent a lot of emails and made a lot of phone calls, and I've never actually gotten anybody on the phone other than, interns. So, it's not a scary thing. And most of the time they're just, checking boxes saying, boy, we got a lot of phone calls on this issue today. Mm-hmm. But it's important, and you're part of the process that way. So, it's always way more beneficial to say, oh yeah, I actually did learn about that issue, and this is what I got from this side. And that at least, you're going to keep the information flowing. That to me is the simplest, easiest way of doing things.
Fantastic. Now, if people wanted to find you online, keep up with you, maybe check out some of the stuff you've written about, where's the best places to do that?
Really, like I slide in a little bit of this stuff on my Instagram account. That's about the only thing I'm super active on right now. And then, the occasional podcast like this one is a great thing too. But, the handle is, Old Cal 406, which, everybody always thinks I'm an old man. So that's where that came from.
I love it. So one last thing before we winding down, once again, this podcast is directed towards people that are either brand new to hunting or folks like myself living in the city who may feel just a little overwhelmed, intimidated by all of this stuff. There's so much to learn, so many subjects, all of this stuff. Do you have any just words of encouragement for these people that feel like, oh my gosh, there's so much I have to learn, so much I have to do before I can get out and enjoy these public lands?
Well, from a hunting perspective, one thing that I just hate about the hunting industry is we go out of our way to make something that's already intimidating, like somebody in Everest intimidating. And it's just not. If I counted my success by actually taking something home, I would not be hunting, because, man, the failures are so outweigh the successes if you look at it that way. So you got to embrace the failures, because to me, it's like the most intense continuing education course I have, right? I learn so much every single time, and I'm doing it constantly. So you got to embrace the failures, kind of embrace the suck part of it, because that's what's going to eventually lead to, a certainly consistent amount of success. So, just go out there, look online, call, for anything that you want to do. These agencies are set up there for you. We're paying them to do their job. So call and say, hey, this is what I'm interested in. Can you point me in the right direction? Whether that's, fishing, hunting, birding, getting up to a tall peak, whatever. But then when you go out there, if you don't make it to the top, or you don't find what you're looking for, definitely slow it down and look at what you did find, and certainly be thankful for getting out of the house in the smog.
Definitely always thankful anytime I can do that. And, whether or not I'm hunting, whether it's just a weekend out in the desert camping or walking the dogs up on one of the foothills, it's definitely a lot better than Netflix on the couch. However much I do enjoy Meat Eater, but
all right, yeah. No, I think we certainly throw folks up on this pedestal that are like, oh, they're the best. They're constantly achieving their goals, or at least that's what we see. And oh man, yeah, there's just, I always say the trigger pulling part of it is so small. Like if you add up those moments,
mm-hmm.
even if you have the most successful season in your life, it is such a small part of your year, of your day out, if that's what you have, that you better appreciate everything else, especially putting food on the table. Because my buddies and I, when we get together and really cook, 4-hour long dinner is pretty standard deal. So that's where the real enjoyment comes out. So
no, absolutely. And I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time out of your day today and joining me on the call. I really think there's a lot of great stuff, and I'm excited to get the word out a little bit more, just to people that may not know as much about it, about our public lands, and how important it is to keep them public.
Yes, sir, absolutely. And if we send out some mailers and stuff through First Lite, and that's www.firstlite.com. Campfire blog, we're putting in a lot of conservation message in there too, and you can kind of see how us scary hunters send things out.
Well, thanks again for hopping on the call. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Thanks much. That was fun.
All right, y'all, that'll do it for episode 15 of Living Country in the City. To find out more about Ryan, First Lite, and the public lands issue, make sure you head on over to our show notes page at livingcountryinthecity.com/15. Now, a couple more things before I let y'all go. If y'all aren't following me on Instagram, make sure you head on over there real soon. Within the next week, I should be officially announcing my big giveaway, and trust me when I say that this is one y'all are definitely not going to want to miss. You are going to love this one. Also, I've got a huge favor to ask y'all. My good friend is in the running to win the hunt of a lifetime as part of the Extreme Huntress competition. Now, if you're not familiar with Extreme Huntress, its goal is to really shine a light on strong female role models for women that want to participate in hunting. Now, here's what I need y'all's help with. I need you to head over to livingcountryinthecity.com/vote-Jamie. That's vote, Jamie, all one word, and vote for my friend Jamie McCarthy. You'll check the box next to her name, and then they'll ask for your email. And now here's the key. You'll want to make sure you check your email and click on that confirmation link to get y'all's votes entered. Now, Jamie's a good friend, a great hunter, and an incredibly talented elk caller. So do me this favor, get over to livingcountryinthecity.com/vote-Jamie and cast your vote for Jamie McCarthy for Extreme Huntress. Finally, if y'all enjoy this podcast and want to help it grow, make sure that you're subscribing. Also, give us a good rating on your favorite podcast platform. Finally, if you'd like to help support the podcast, head on over to livingcountryinthecity.com/Amazon. Bookmark the link and use it whenever you do your Amazon shopping. But in the meantime, stay country, y'all.
Thank y'all for listening to Living Country in the City. Get show notes and check out the blog, product reviews, events, and more at livingcountryinthecity.com.